The sun hung low like a tarnished coin over the red-dust courthouse, and the wind carried laughter that wasn't kind. Elijah stood still as stone beneath the warped wooden archway, boots scuffed from hard trail riding, hands rough and knotted from branding irons and busted saddles. A fresh shirt clung to his back, starched and stiff with the kind of starch only bought for a wedding. And not just any wedding, a strange one. One that had every drunk in town peering through glassless windows and whispering behind tobacco-stained palms. Across from him stood Dorothea McGraw, 65, draped in ivory silk stitched by hands long buried. Her veil was thin and her cane clicked sharp against the floor. Her silver hair was wound like braided wire, and her gaze, those gray eyes with flints behind them, never left Elijah's face. The preacher, stuttering through cracked lips, fumbled the vows. "Do you, Elijah Boone, take this woman?" Elijah nodded once, his voice low. "I do." Gasps rippled from the back pews. Somewhere, a boy spat out his chaw and said, "He's gone loco." Someone else laughed too loud. But Dorothea just smiled, thin and unreadable. She didn't care for whispers. She'd outlived more gossip than any of them dared speak aloud. When the preacher finished, she didn't wait. She reached out, pressed a calloused palm into Elijah's, and said, "We're done with ceremony now. I hate wasting good sun." Outside, the horses snorted. The air held that spring promise of storms. Folks cleared a path as the new couple stepped through the door, but not from respect, more like disbelief. Elijah's skin, dark and dusted, didn't belong to the moneyed folk of this town, and Dorothea's old bones were supposed to be buried soon, not bedded. As they passed, the banker leaned to the sheriff and muttered, "What's a broke black wrangler want with a dying baroness?" The sheriff, never known for tact, replied, "Land. Ain't nothing else worth marrying for around here." Elijah didn't blink. He heard it all, but his spine stayed straight. He had ridden through worse storms than words. They rode out together, her side saddle, him stiff on a borrowed bay, toward the edge of the McGraw property. It stretched farther than most men's hopes, rimmed by cacti and mesquite, fencing half fallen and half forgotten. At the gate, Dorothea paused and looked up at him. "You nervous?" "No, ma'am." "You should be." He said nothing. Let her have the mystery if she wanted it. The ranch house appeared like a mirage, stone walls, ivy strangled around a crumbling chimney, porch sagging from age. The air smelled of old leather, gun oil, and geraniums growing wild where someone once cared. Inside, it wasn't what he expected. No velvet curtains or lace trim. Just heavy wooden beams, war maps nailed to the walls, and rifles mounted above a stone hearth. A single photograph sat framed near the fire, a younger Dorothea, beside two men and a small dark-haired child. "Stew's in the pot," she said, dropping her veil. "I'll fetch the whiskey." Elijah stood in the middle of the room like a misplaced statue. He removed his hat. The silence wasn't cold, it was waiting. She returned with a bottle and 2 tin cups. "No bed talk," she warned, handing him one. "I didn't marry for softness." "I didn't expect it." Their eyes met. Something ancient passed between them, older than marriage, older than race, older than pain. It was the look of two people who had known work, known hunger, known silence. They ate in quiet. She chewed slow, hands steady. Elijah's mind wandered. Back to the trail, the years under open skies with only a lariat and luck to keep him alive. He had signed no deals with the devil, but this marriage felt close. That night, he slept on a cot in the barn, the scent of hay and iron filling his lungs. He liked it better than the house, anyway. The stars blinked overhead like indifferent witnesses. At dawn, the whistle of wind shifted. Something stirred. He opened his eyes to the sound of hooves, many, thundering and deliberate. From the loft window, he saw them, a dozen riders in dusters and bandoliers, moving like ghosts across the pasture. Not cowboys. Not ranch hands. Soldiers, almost, silent and efficient. Dorothea stood at their head, already dressed in a riding coat, her hair bound tight beneath a leather hat. "You'll ride with them today," she said to Elijah when he met her at the corral. "Time to see what you married into." "No questions." No explanations. He saddled up. They rode deep into the ranch lands, far past where barbed wire marked boundaries, through ravines and rocky trails. He watched her from the side. She didn't ride like an old woman. She rode like she'd learned it in war. The others said little. A Comanche boy, maybe 20, nodded at Elijah once. An older hand named Buck spat every mile or so, but otherwise it was silence. They stopped near a canyon rim where cattle grazed like ants on the plain below. Dorothea dismounted, her bones creaking. "That herd's been driven off twice," she said. "Once by settlers thinkin' I'm too old to hold it. Once by folks who want this land for the railway." "What'd you do?" "Shot back." No smile. No exaggeration. He glanced at the others. Not a single one blinked. "You protect this land with guns?" he asked. "With truth. But sometimes truth's got to be loaded." On the ride back, they passed a small grave marked by a wooden cross. Elijah slowed. The name carved into it had faded, but the earth looked fresh. Dorothea didn't stop. Later that night, as he unsaddled his horse, the foreman, tall, red-bearded, and bitter-eyed, grabbed a teenage stable hand by the collar and raised a switch. "He took extra rations," he barked. Elijah stepped between them. "Put it down." The foreman bristled. "He stole. He's a boy." So were most Hanjin men. Before fists could fly, Dorothea arrived. Her eyes snapped to the whip. "Drop it," she said. The foreman hesitated, then obeyed. She turned to Elijah. "You've got a way about you. Quiet like thunder. From now on, you'll ride watch." He blinked. "Why?" "Because I don't need more muscle. I need a man who knows when to speak." That night, she showed him the ledgers, old books with more ink than gold, full of coded entries and initials. Elijah didn't understand half of it. She poured him another drink. "Do you know what this land cost me?" "No." "Neither do I. Some days I think it was my soul." They sat by the fire. The silence wasn't empty now. It was full of ghosts. Later, as rain began to fall soft on the tin roof, she asked without looking up, "What are you hoping for, Elijah?" He thought a long time. "Something mine. Not stolen. Not handed. Just mine." She nodded slowly. "Then maybe you and I can build something. Not for love. For legacy." He slept in the house that night. Still no touching. But he wasn't on the cot. The wind picked up near dawn. Thunder rolled faintly in the distance. He woke to the rattle of a keyring. From beneath her pillow, Dorothea handed him a set of rusted iron keys. "Barn's yours now, too. Just don't open the north wing." Elijah waited until she slept. The keys burned cold in his palm. He rose and walked under the lightning-streaked sky toward the barn. Horses shifted in their stalls. A mouse scattered across the grain bags. He reached the northern doors. The lock clicked open easy. Inside, dust and darkness. His lantern flickered. He found a saddle caked in dry blood. A row of old boots. A hat with a bullet hole through it. And then, on the back wall, posters. Dozens. Yellowed and curled. All had names crossed out. Except one. Dorothea McGraw. Wanted, dead or alive. Elijah didn't speak. Just stood there as the storm broke above the roof. He had come looking for land. What he'd found was a legacy soaked in secrets. And beside that old saddle, in the flicker of the lantern light, was a notebook. The cover read, "For whoever comes after." He didn't open it yet. Some truths waited better in silence. Morning broke like an old man's yawn, slow, reluctant, with the sky stretching itself over the plains in streaks of amber and soft gray. Elijah stood outside the barn, coffee cooling in his hands, eyes still tethered to the memory of those yellowed wanted posters and the blood-rusted saddle. He hadn't told her he'd looked. Not yet. Dorothea moved like the storm hadn't happened. She walked the grounds with a rifle cradled in one arm and a clipboard in the other, issuing orders to men who obeyed with silent respect. It was like she'd always commanded armies instead of cattle. "Cows need herding west," she called to Elijah without looking back. "They'll try again soon. You'll see." "Who?" he asked, though he had a guess. She didn't answer, but her glance, sharp and knowing, told him everything he needed. The past was never past. "Not out here." He saddled up and rode out with 3 others. Buck, the old ranch hand who cursed with every breath. Jonah, the young Comanche with eyes like obsidian. And Two Toes, a toothless man who claimed to have fought in 2 wars but didn't say which. They herded 100 head across a narrow valley as vultures circled high above and the wind whispered of things not buried deep enough. Elijah noticed something strange. There were fresh hoof prints leading out from the canyon. Not theirs. Someone had been watching. Or worse, testing the perimeter. That night, Dorothea served elk stew and stared into the fire while Elijah read from her late husband's old journal. The words were dry, technical, full of numbers and cattle weights, but a few pages near the end had a different tone. "If she survives me, I reckon she'll outlive this place too. She's got steel bones and secrets stronger than any fence." Elijah closed the book. "Your husband knew a lot," he said. "He knew enough to die before the war started." Elijah raised a brow. "What war?" Dorothea leaned back in her chair. The fire threw shadows across her face, accentuating the creases time hadn't softened. "There's always a war when a woman owns more than men think she should. Especially a woman with color on her payroll and a graveyard full of trespassers behind the barn." "You killed them." "No," she said calmly. "But I buried them." Her hands folded on her lap, the way a preacher might before a funeral. He didn't ask more. He'd seen that barn. He knew silence was sometimes mercy. The next day, a stranger came riding into the yard. He was tall, wore city clothes, and had a Pinkerton badge half hidden beneath his coat. Elijah caught it glinting as he dismounted. "Morning," the man said, tipping his hat. "Name's Merrick. Just passing through." "Most folks don't pass through a ranch 20 miles off the main road," Elijah replied. Merrick smiled. "True. But some of us make exceptions for legends." Dorothea came out then, her cane tapping like gunfire on the porch planks. "You're 3 years too late, Merrick," she said. "I buried the last of your kind with broken teeth." He chuckled like she'd told a joke, but his hand didn't stray far from his hip. "I'm just here for information, Miss McGraw. I ain't even wearing my gun today." "Lies don't suit you," she said. Elijah stepped closer, eyes on Merrick's fingers. "Who are you looking for?" he asked. Merrick finally dropped the act. "Woman. Aging. Former outlaw. Goes by a dozen names. Rumors say she's building something out here, something dangerous." "You mean peace?" Dorothea asked. "I mean resistance." The word hung between them like smoke. Merrick didn't press. Just tipped his hat again and walked back to his horse. Before mounting, he turned. "I'd sleep with one eye open if I were you, Cowboy. The law's getting real impatient." They watched him ride off into the dust, the hoofbeats fading like a warning bell. Elijah glanced at Dorothea. "Why didn't you shoot him?" "Because he's not the one who'll strike first," she said. "But someone else will. And when they do, we'll know who to trust." That night, Elijah took his cot back into the barn. Not because he was afraid, but because he wanted to be closer to the land. To hear the boots coming if they came. The wind rattled the rafters. Somewhere, an owl called once, then went quiet. Jonah appeared near midnight, silent as smoke. "Ride with me," he said. Elijah followed without a word. They rode east, past the creek and the willow grove, to a shallow ridge that overlooked the road into town. Jonah pointed. Below, lanterns flickered. A small camp had sprung up, 5 men, 2 wagons, rifles stacked in the dirt. "They're waiting," Jonah said. "Watching. Mercenaries. Or Pinkertons. Hard to tell from up here." They rode back before dawn. Dorothea was already waiting. "You saw them?" she asked. Elijah nodded. "They're not stupid," she said. "They're building a noose and hoping we walk into it." She handed him a folded paper. "What's this?" he asked. "A deed. If something happens to me, the land's yours." He didn't open it. "I don't want it like that," he said. "You might not have a choice." Days passed with a kind of uneasy quiet, the way a dog watches a rattlesnake, waiting to see who moves first. Elijah took to riding alone, checking the northern fences, fixing gates, keeping his eyes on the horizon. He started noticing small things. A broken fence post with boot prints around it. A water barrel drained by someone who didn't belong. Tracks leading from the north barn to the woods, ones that weren't theirs. He brought it all to Dorothea. "Somebody's trying to weaken us," he said. "Bit by bit." She studied the maps in her parlor like a general plotting defense. "I knew this would come," she said. "But I hoped it'd wait a little longer." "Why?" "Because I'm tired, Elijah. I've buried 2 husbands, 3 sons, and too many friends. I wanted to grow tomatoes this spring." He looked at her then, not as a ranch owner or an outlaw, but as a woman. Just a woman. Tired, brilliant, bruised. "You ever think about leaving?" he asked. "Every damn day. And every damn day I stay." The words hit like a confession. That night, he read from her notebook. The one marked, "For whoever comes after." The pages were part ledger, part diary. "They tried to take the land in 81. I burned their wagons and paid the sheriff to look away. They came again in 84. This time, they left 3 dead behind the west barn. I didn't cry. I just reloaded. I married Elijah Boone because he's too proud to ask for anything, too strong to run, and too smart to trust too quick. He might save this place. Or die with it." He closed the book and breathed deep. He didn't sleep much after that. The next morning, Buck was gone. His bedroll empty, saddle missing, no note. Just silence. They searched. No sign. Just a length of rope near the south well and a trail of prints leading off into the brush. "They took him," Jonah said. "Trying to draw us out." Dorothea looked tired for the first time. Truly tired. "Then we don't follow," she said. "But—" "No. We hold. We wait." Elijah disagreed, but said nothing. That night, the firelight danced on the walls. Dorothea lit her pipe and stared at the flames. "You know what the hardest part is?" she asked. "No. It ain't killing. It's knowing when not to." He poured her another drink and said nothing. Her hand touched his briefly, fingers rough and cold, but steady. "You still want this land?" she asked. "I want what you've built." "It wasn't built with money." "I know." He didn't need to say more. The next evening, just as the sun kissed the rim of the world, a rider came through the northern fence, barely conscious, shot in the shoulder, half falling from the saddle. It was Buck. Elijah and Jonah caught him before he dropped. "They're coming," he rasped. "Tomorrow. With 6, maybe more. Said they'd finish what they started." Dorothea stood at the edge of the porch, rifle in hand, eyes on the horizon. Elijah turned to her. "We should run." "No," she said. "We dig in." He hesitated. "If you stay," she said, "you might not see another dawn." He stepped beside her. "If I leave," he said, "I'd never forgive myself." A slow nod. No smiles. No romance. Just shared understanding. The wind kicked up. Coyotes howled far off. Inside, Elijah cleaned his gun. Jonah sharpened blades. The others stacked barrels and checked ammunition. Outside, Dorothea fed the horses one last time, then came back into the house and locked the door behind her. They sat around the fire in silence, waiting. Waiting for the storm to come. And when it did, they'd be ready. Because this time, they weren't just protecting land. They were protecting something built from scars and silence. Something sacred. The night before the attack, The land held its breath. The wind died. The trees stilled. Even the insects went silent, as if the prairie itself was listening. Elijah sat on the edge of the porch, rifle resting across his lap. Beside him, Jonah methodically sharpened a skinning knife, the rhythmic scrape echoing like a clock winding down. Inside, Dorothea moved with quiet purpose, securing shutters, loading rounds into tin boxes, placing lanterns in specific corners like she'd done it all before. He wanted to ask her how many times she'd stood on this threshold, waiting for danger. But the question felt small, and the silence between them felt sacred. So he said nothing. She stepped out just before midnight, wrapped in a heavy canvas duster, her silver hair bound back tight. Her eyes were shadowed but clear. "I've posted the boys behind the barn and in the hayloft," she said. "You'll stay by the east wall." Elijah nodded. She hesitated. "They won't come through the front." He narrowed his gaze. "How do you know?" "Because that's what I do." She turned away then, walking slow into the darkness like she belonged to it. He watched her go, heart thudding a little louder than the hush around him. In the east corner of the ranch yard, Elijah found his spot, half hidden behind a stack of firewood, his back to a weathered tool shed. The moon glared overhead like a lidless eye. Somewhere in the distance, a coyote cried out once, then fell silent. He waited, and then he saw them. Shapes, low and fast, cutting across the brush like oil across water. 5 men, maybe 6, all dressed in dark dusters and wide hats, rifles slung across their backs. They moved with confidence, too quick to be afraid. He didn't fire. Not yet. He waited until one of them stepped too close to the side corral, where Jonah crouched behind a trough. The first gunshot rang out like a church bell on Judgment Day. Chaos broke loose. Elijah spun around the woodpile, firing once, twice, striking a man through the thigh. The attacker crumpled with a curse, gun dropping from his hand. Another figure charged from the shadows, only to be taken down by Buck, who emerged from the smoke with a shotgun roar and a whoop of raw anger. "Thought you boys were ghosts," Buck yelled, reloading fast. "Turns out you're just stupid." The air filled with smoke and fury. Flames sparked from a lantern that had fallen near the barn. Horses screamed in their stalls. Jonah leapt from the trough and tackled a man to the dirt, blade flashing in the firelight. Dorothea fired once from the porch, then again, hitting her marks clean. Elijah saw a man aiming toward the house and didn't think, just ran. He barreled into him, knocking the gun aside, the shot flying wild into the sky. They hit the ground hard. Fists. Elbows. The bitter taste of dirt in Elijah's mouth. The man's knee drove into his side, but Elijah found a rock and slammed it into the attacker's temple. Once. Twice. Until the man went limp. He rose, breath ragged, blood in his mouth. Dorothea called out, "Elijah! Inside, now!" He turned. A second wave was coming. Men on horseback this time, kicking up dust, shooting blind. They weren't bandits. They were hired wolves, mercenaries sent to finish what the Pinkertons hadn't dared. He ran. Inside the house, Dorothea was barricading the doors. Jonah and Two Toes helped flip the table, while Buck limped in last, dragging a rifle in one hand and holding his bleeding shoulder with the other. "We can't hold them long," Jonah said. "We don't have to," Dorothea answered, eyes fierce. "We just have to outlast them." The gunfire outside continued, but fainter now. The first wave had been broken, scattered into the dark. The second group held back, regrouping. Planning. Elijah sat down hard, chest heaving. Dorothea knelt beside him and pressed a damp cloth to a cut on his forehead. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded, too winded to speak. She paused, then leaned in close. "There's something I didn't tell you." He met her gaze. "Now's a hell of a time. I had a daughter." The words hit like a stray bullet. "She was 15 when she ran off," Dorothea said. "Thought I was too cold. Too hard. Thought I loved the ranch more than her." Elijah swallowed. "What happened to her?" "She joined up with outlaws. Died robbing a stagecoach." The fire crackled. Somewhere outside, a horse screamed again. Dorothea's voice broke, just once. That's when I stopped asking for love. Started building walls. He reached for her hand, calloused and trembling. Held it tight. You didn't stop loving, he said. You just buried it. They sat like that for a moment. Then Buck called out. They're coming again. This time, it was quiet. No charging hooves. No war cries. Just a single figure walking through the smoke, lantern in one hand, shotgun in the other. Merrick. The Pinkerton. He walked like a man who'd already won. Dorothea stepped out onto the porch. Turn around, she said. Merrick smiled. I gave you a chance, he said. Told you the law was tired of waiting. That badge on your chest, she said. It's worth less than the dirt under your boots. You're harboring fugitives. Hiding stolen property. You're a criminal, Dorothea. She raised her rifle. I'm a woman who outlived her enemies. Elijah stood behind her now. Jonah beside him. Even Buck, arm-bound and face-pale, raised his weapon. Merrick looked at them all. Last chance, he said. Dorothea answered with lead. The first shot struck the lantern in Merrick's hand. Glass shattered. Flames spilled across his sleeve. He dropped the shotgun, swearing, rolling in the dirt. He didn't die. But he didn't fight again. The others rode off. Cowards. Paid men without a paycheck now that their leader was crawling and cursing. It ended not with a roar, but with the sound of hooves fading into the dawn. Elijah sat on the porch, blood on his shirt, smoke in his lungs, and the sky slowly brightening in hues of fire and gold. Dorothea sat beside him. You still want this place? She asked, voice hoarse. He looked at the land. At the burnt barn. The broken fences. The trail of blood leading from the gate. And then beyond it all, to the hills, the creek, the sky. I don't want the place, he said. I want what we make out of it. She nodded, slow. Then, at last, she leaned her head on his shoulder. It was not romance. It was not surrender. It was something deeper. In the coming days, they buried their dead and patched their wounds. The town came quiet with questions, but no one dared challenge Dorothea again. Merrick disappeared. His badge found in the river weeks later. Elijah stayed. Not because he had nowhere else to go, but because, for the first time, he'd found a reason to build. He spent his mornings fixing fence posts and his evenings reading aloud to her under the porch light. And sometimes, in the hush between tasks, he'd pause and stare across the horizon. He wasn't the man he was before. He'd come poor and desperate, looking for dirt to claim. What he found was a fire-forged bond, and a woman who'd taught him that survival wasn't the end of the story. Sometimes, it was just the start. The fire that consumed the west barn burned low by morning, its final breath rising into a sky streaked with gold and ash. The air smelled of smoke, sweat, and something older, something like release. Elijah stood at the edge of the ruins, a shovel in one hand, staring at the charred remains of what had once been the heartbeat of Dorothea's empire. Flames had taken more than lumber. They'd taken tools, horses, memories, and nearly their will. But not their spirit. Behind him, the ranch stirred with cautious life. Jonah and Two Toes sifted through the blackened wreckage, salvaging what they could. Dorothea leaned against the porch post, cane steady, her eyes watchful. She had not slept. Neither had Elijah. She's still standing, she said quietly. He turned, shoulders heavy. Just barely. That's more than most. She looked at the broken barn, then back at him. But that won't be the last of it. Elijah nodded. They'll come again. She stepped down from the porch, stiff but purposeful. Then we rebuild faster than they can plot. And we strike first. He studied her face, creased, lined, leather tough, but something inside her had shifted. Not softness, not surrender, but a shift all the same. The way an old tree bends just enough not to break. That morning, Elijah rode to town with a purpose. Not to beg. not to hide, but to deliver a message. The saloon stilled when he entered. Men turned. Some recognized him as the one who'd married the old cattle baroness. Others remembered him from the firefight. He ignored them all and walked to the barkeep. "Need a telegram sent." "Where to?" "North. Dodge Junction." The barkeep raised a brow. "Expensive." "I'll pay." The message was brief. One line. "Call in the markers. The widow's ready to cash out." The barkeep stared, then nodded. "I'll see it done." Elijah didn't wait for conversation. He turned and walked out the way he came. 3 days passed. 3 days of hammering, of hauling, of healing. The barn wouldn't rise overnight, but the fence did. Jonah trained the hands in a new pattern. Double rotations, hidden outposts. Two-Toes rigged bells from old tools and strung them across brush lines. And Dorothea, she wrote. Letters. Instructions. Names. Elijah found her one night beneath the porch lantern, writing by hand in a leather-bound book she wouldn't let anyone else touch. "You still expecting company?" he asked. She smiled without looking up. "I sent word to people I helped long ago. Not many left. But enough." "You trust them?" "I trust debts. People forget love, but they don't forget what they owe." He sat beside her, silent for a long while. "When this is over," he said, "what happens to the ranch?" She stopped writing. Her eyes lifted. "You." He blinked. "Me. You'll own it." "I don't." "You do," she cut in. "You bled for it. You stayed. That's what makes it yours." He looked away. "And you?" She smiled again, faint and tired. "I'll be here. I may not run it, but I'll haunt it good." That night, the moon shone pale over the ranch house. And then, hoofbeats. Not enemies. Allies. They came in quiet, like rain on a tin roof. 1 wagon. 2 riders. 1 woman with eyes like carved obsidian. A family with Navajo blood and worn rifles. A pair of black ranchers from Missouri who once crossed Texas with Dorothea's help. A boy she'd saved from a hanging. A woman she'd fed when no one else would. They came without asking why. They came because when Dorothea called, folks listened. The next day, Elijah stood on the porch beside her and looked out over a ranch no longer just surviving, but ready to fight. "They'll try one last time," he said. She nodded. "And we'll give them one last answer." That answer came 2 days later. It began with smoke, rising over the ridge, curling like a bad omen. Then came the sound of wheels. Heavy. Deliberate. A covered wagon, flanked by 5 riders, rolled up the main road. Their horses were war-trained, armor-strapped. Their eyes were dead. At the front rode Merrick. He had returned. But something about him had changed. His coat was new. His badge was gone. And his expression was harder than before. He called out, his voice echoing across the field. "Dorothea McGraw, we're here to collect what you owe." She stepped onto the porch, Elijah at her side. "I don't owe you a damn thing. You owe justice. I gave more justice than you ever learned to spell." He raised his hand. The 5 riders spread out. From the trees behind the ranch house, Elijah saw the signal. Jonah, hidden in the pines, raised a hand. "Now?" Elijah asked. Dorothea didn't flinch. "Now." What followed wasn't a gunfight. It was a reckoning. Arrows flew from the brush, striking 2 riders clean. One dropped instantly, the other screamed and turned to flee, only to ride straight into a trap Jonah had set with rope and barbed wire. The horse bucked. The man fell. Silence followed. Two-Toes fired from the windmill, striking the last man in the shoulder. He tumbled from his mount and crawled. He wouldn't rise again. Merrick remained. Alone. He raised both hands. No gun. "I didn't come to die," he said. "You should have thought of that before coming back," Dorothea replied. Elijah stepped forward, rifle steady. "Give me one reason." Merrick looked between them. "I'm not with the Pinkertons anymore. They left me. Said I'd failed. And I came to warn you." Dorothea laughed, dry and sharp. "Warn me? After setting fire to my home?" "They're sending more," he said. "Not men. A company. With writs. With legal power. They'll strip this land clean. Doesn't matter who dies." Elijah didn't lower his gun. "Why warn us?" "Because they did the same to my family. My land. Burned my crops. Took everything." Silence stretched thin. Dorothea's voice came soft but cold. "So you want mercy?" "I want in." Elijah blinked. "I want to fight with you," Merrick said. "I've seen enough blood spilled for money. Let me spill some for justice." It wasn't redemption, but it was close. Dorothea stepped down from the porch, stared him down. "You get one chance." He nodded. She turned to Elijah. "If he crosses us, shoot him." That night, the final plans were drawn. The ranch became a fortress. Hidden rifles. Reinforced sheds. Escape routes mapped. The orphans and elders moved to the caves along the ridge. Everyone else prepared for siege. It came at dawn. Wagons. Badged men. Bureau guns. Not just thugs now, but officers, officials, names with titles. They read out loud. Under Article 12, Paragraph 6 of the Land Reclamation Act. Dorothea stepped forward. "I didn't sign no act. You refused to pay your debts." She held up a folded paper. "This deed says I owe no one. It's invalid." "No," Elijah said, stepping beside her. "It's inconvenient." That broke the line. The battle came sudden. Bullets tore through shutters. Fire roared as one wagon lit the shed. Merrick fired from the corral. Jonah leapt from the barn roof with a lasso and dragged a soldier from his saddle. Two Toes fell, clutching his chest, whispering a name no one heard. Dorothea fired until her rifle clicked empty. Elijah reloaded beside her, sweat on his brow, blood on his sleeve. He looked at her, really looked. She was smiling. Through fire. Through loss. Smiling. And then, quiet. Bodies on the field. Smoke drifting low. The last of the company fled. The law lost its teeth. And the widow's empire stood. Barely. But enough. They buried the fallen with carved stones. No names. Just symbols. The circle for loyalty. The flame for courage. The tree for roots. Dorothea didn't speak much after. She sat on the porch, blanket across her knees, staring at the land. Elijah joined her every night. One evening she said, "I think I'm ready to rest." "You've earned it. You'll keep the land. I'll keep the spirit." She smiled. "Then I've done my job." She passed in her sleep that winter. Quiet. Alone in her chair. One hand resting on a book, the other on her chest. The town expected Elijah to sell. To leave. He didn't. He rebuilt the barn. Restored the well. Planted tomatoes like she always wanted. He didn't remarry. He didn't leave. He just lived. And when folks came by, strangers or kin, he offered shelter. Because once, a black cowboy married a cattle baroness who the world had written off. And 5 days later, he saw not a woman past her time, but a legend, still in bloom. The snow came down sideways that morning, thick as flour in the wind. It wasn't a storm yet, but it had the makings of one. Sky bruised purple, pines groaning with frost, and the kind of hush that settled deep in the bones. Olivia Mays stood beneath the porch awning, oil lamp in hand, watching the horizon disappear inch by inch. Her breath fogged the glass as she whispered a prayer she no longer believed in. She didn't expect to hear the gunshot. It came sharp through the trees. One single crack, then nothing. Not echo nor second round. Just the thud of silence closing in. Her dog, Boone, perked his ears, his tail stiff with alert. Olivia narrowed her eyes toward the ridge, where the pines curled like a frozen wave and shadows clung tighter than bark. It might have been a hunter, or a drunk, or something worse. She turned, hung the lamp back on its hook, and reached for her coat. Her hands moved out of instinct, not thought. She hadn't planned to ride out today, not with the snow rolling in. But that shot, something about it sounded final. Not a warning, not a chase. A full stop. 15 minutes later, she was saddled up and headed into the timber, Boone loping ahead. Her horse, Pearl, snorted in protest as they climbed the frozen incline, hooves crunching through the top crust of snow. Wind moaned through the trees like a sorrowing widow. And Olivia knew sorrow well. Tom had been gone 3 weeks. Buried just before the first frost. He'd come home from a long bounty run, riding someone else's horse and with blood on his collar. Told her it was nothing, just bad luck and bad roads. 2 days later, he was dead on their porch, throat slit clean like a butchered hog. No warning. No goodbye. No clue who did it. She'd sent word to the sheriff in Deadwater, but he hadn't come. Likely wouldn't. Tom had enemies. Bounty hunters often did. So Olivia buried her husband alone under the pine behind the cabin and hadn't cried since. Grief, she learned, didn't always come in tears. Sometimes it just hollowed you out and left you walking around like a ghost. Boone let out a low growl, nose twitching. Olivia pulled the reins. They were nearing the clearing near Widow's Notch, where the pines opened wide around a rock face and creek. That's when she saw the blood trail. Splatters dark against the white. Fresh. Still steaming. She dismounted quietly, rifle in hand, and followed Boone through the trees. The dog led her slow, head low, ears back. Then she saw the body. A man. Slumped beside a fallen log, one arm curled under him like he'd tried to break his fall. Snow clung to his coat, crusting over the dark stain on his side. His hat had fallen a few feet away, half buried. She could see his chest rise, barely. Alive. Olivia kept her rifle up as she circled closer. He was tall, even folded over, with a worn duster slicked with ice. His left boot was missing. Blood soaked through his shirt above the hip. Shot, likely. At close range. Don't move, she warned, voice flat. I'll shoot if you twitch. The man groaned. Not words, just a sound pulled from somewhere deep. Boone sniffed him and backed away, whimpering. Olivia took a step closer, then froze. A flash of metal caught her eye, half buried in the snow beside him. She nudged it with her boot. A silver sheriff's badge? No, not quite. It was a bounty hunter's medallion. She looked back at the man's face. Blood crusted along his hairline. A scar ran along the edge of his jaw like a knife mark. Unfamiliar. She didn't know him. But she knew the kind of men who wore that badge. Killer. Tracker. One of Tom's kind. She could leave him here. Let the snow finish the job. But she didn't. With a grunt, she grabbed the collar of his coat and heaved. He was heavy, dead weight, half conscious, maybe worse. Took her 3 tries to get him up on Pearl, slumped over the saddle horn like a sack of oats. Then she rode home slow, one hand on the reins, the other gripping her rifle tight. Snow swirled around them like ghosts. The cabin was warmer than outside, but not by much. Olivia dragged him onto the floor near the hearth, groaning with effort. Her back ached, arms trembling. "Damn you," she muttered. "Whoever you are." He didn't answer. Just breathed ragged, like each one cost him. She started with the coat, cut it off in chunks, then peeled back the blood-soaked shirt. The wound was bad. Through and through, high in the side, but not gut-shot. She cleaned it with whiskey, biting her lip as he thrashed and moaned. His eyes opened once, stormy gray, wild. Then closed again. The bullet came out easy. Old wound. He'd been bleeding too long. She stitched him slow, careful, fingers sure despite the tremble. When it was done, She sat back on her heels and stared. He looked younger now without the dirt and blood. Mid-30s, maybe. Calloused hands. Beard rough like he hadn't shaved in weeks. That scar on his jaw still raw-looking. And something in his face. Hard to place. Not cruel. Just worn. She sighed, stood, and tossed his ruined coat aside. A packet fell from the pocket. Thin leather, tied with string. Curious, she opened it. Inside, a folded wanted poster. The face was weathered, sketched in haste, but clear enough. A bounty worth $2,000. Dead or alive. Name, Thomas Mays. Her breath caught. Her hands trembled as she turned over the paper. There was no doubt. Her husband. And this man had carried the paper like a relic. She looked down at him. His chest rose slow, rhythm steady now. She could shoot him. Right here. Quick and clean. End whatever story had begun between them before it wound tighter. Instead, she folded the poster, tucked it in her apron, and whispered, "Not yet." By nightfall, the wind howled. Snow slammed against the shutters. Olivia fed the stove and stirred a pot of beans, though she had no appetite. The stranger lay on her floor, fevered but alive. He stirred sometime near midnight. She sat beside him with a wet cloth, dabbing sweat from his brow. "Where am I?" he croaked. "Alive," she said. "For now." His eyes searched hers. He tried to sit up, failed. Grimaced. "You brought me here? You were bleeding to death in the woods. I'm not in the habit of letting folks freeze." He stared at her. Then, quietly, "You should have left me." "Maybe," she said, voice dry. "But here we are." Silence. After a while, he said, "Name's Calder." "Olivia," she replied. She didn't offer more. Another silence, longer this time. Then he nodded and closed his eyes. Olivia sat there a while, listening to the wind scream and the wood crackle. Outside, the world was white, cold, and merciless. Inside, two strangers breathed the same firelit air, a dead man's name between them. And only Olivia knew the truth. The wind let up the next morning, but the silence that replaced it felt even heavier. Olivia stood at the cabin window, her fingers wrapped around a steaming tin mug. The snow had glazed over the world in brittle glass. Every branch wore frost like lace. Her breath fogged the pain as she watched Boone dart across the yard, paws sinking deep. Behind her, the man stirred. She turned slowly. He lay still for a moment, face creased with pain, then his eyes fluttered open. "Where?" His voice was rough gravel. "You're not dead," she said without moving. "You were close." He blinked, focused on the ceiling, then winced. "Feels like I've been trampled." "You've been shot. Lost blood. Fever came and went. You were half frozen when I found you." He tried to sit, then gave up, grimacing. "Who are you?" "Olivia Mays." His eyes searched hers. She held his gaze, quiet, unreadable. "You brought me here?" "I did." "Why?" Olivia took a slow sip of coffee, then answered, "Because I didn't want your ghost haunting my woods." He almost laughed, but it came out more like a cough. "Generous of you." She said nothing. After a pause, he asked, "How long have I been out?" 4 days. Maybe 5. He frowned. "I don't remember much. Just cold. And pain. That's about all there was." He tried to move his arm. She stepped forward quickly. "Don't. You'll tear the stitches." He exhaled hard through his nose, frustration plain in the tension of his jaw. "My horse. Gone. My things. Some were with you. The rest scattered. I only brought back what I could carry. You've got a busted knife, half a map, and 1 boot." He snorted. "Figures." Olivia crossed her arms, eyeing him. "You gonna tell me your name, or should I keep calling you that half-dead fool?" He paused, as if weighing something. Calder. First name. He looked away. Just Calder. Olivia didn't push. She'd known men like that, who wore their pasts like closed coffins. But still, something in the way he said it gave her pause. "Well, Calder," she said slowly, "you're in no shape to leave, and I won't carry you twice. So you'll rest, eat what I give you, and not touch a damn thing without asking." He gave a small nod. "Fair enough." She turned, poured him a bit of broth, and set it near the cot. He reached for the cup, his hand shaking. She watched him fight to hold it steady. "You got folks?" she asked. "No." "Friends?" "No." "Enemies?" He met her eyes. "Don't we all?" She didn't smile. "Some more than others." That was the end of that conversation. Over the next few days, Calder recovered slow but steady. Olivia kept to her routines, feeding the animals, chopping wood, checking traps, but always with one ear turned toward the cabin. She didn't trust him, not yet. But she didn't fear him either. Not exactly. He wasn't the kind of man who filled a room with his presence. He moved like someone used to being forgotten. Quiet. Measured. Observant. He studied everything, the way she chopped vegetables, the rhythm of her footsteps, the drawer she kept locked near the hearth. Never asked, never snooped. But she saw him noticing. And she noticed him, too. How he always thanked her, even for a crust of bread. How he rubbed at the scar on his jaw when he was thinking. How he winced when he stretched too far, but never complained. One evening, she found him by the hearth, shirt loose over his stitches, humming a soft tune. "You know that song?" she asked. He looked up, surprised. "Don't know where I picked it up. Been hummin' it since I was a boy." Olivia's mouth went dry. She'd heard that tune before, late at night, on Tom's lips when he thought she was asleep. She said nothing, just stirred the stew harder than necessary. Later that night, she sat on the porch, oil lamp beside her, watching the stars flicker through the frozen air. Boone lay curled at her feet. Behind her, the door creaked. "You don't sleep much," Calder said. She didn't turn. "Sleep comes when it wants. Not before." He eased himself into the chair opposite her. Moved stiff, but better than before. The firelight from inside caught the edge of his face, shadowing one eye, outlining the sharp cut of his cheekbone. "You're good with a needle," he said. "Saved my hide." Olivia shrugged. A woman alone on the frontier learns plenty. How to stitch flesh. Bury a body. Build a fence. Shoot straight. He glanced toward her rifle, propped by the door. "Looks like it's seen use." It has. Another quiet moment passed. The night creaked around them. "I figure you've got questions," he said finally. "I do. You want answers?" "I want the truth." Calder ran a hand through his hair. "Truth's a long road, Olivia." She looked at him, sharp. "That's not an answer." He sighed. "I was tracking someone. He led me up into these hills. Real slippery sort. Thought I had him. Turns out, he had me. What kind of man? The kind that makes folks disappear. Hurt plenty of people. Got blood on his hands. Name." He hesitated. "Don't think I ought to say. Not yet." "Why?" Calder looked her dead in the eye. "Because I ain't sure who I am with you yet. And you don't know who I was with him." The fire popped behind them. Olivia stood slowly. "Then maybe I won't patch up the next stranger who bleeds on my land." He didn't reply. She walked back inside, leaving the door open just long enough for the cold to settle on his shoulders. By the time a week passed, Calder could move around well enough to help. He split logs, badly at first, then with more rhythm. Repaired a loose hinge on the barn. Mucked the chicken coop. His hands, while still pale from healing, were strong and deliberate. Olivia noticed. She also noticed the way he avoided the bounty medallion she'd left on the mantel. Never touched it. Never looked at it. Like it was cursed. One afternoon, as she folded laundry, he asked, "What was your husband like?" She stiffened. "Tom." He nodded. She didn't answer right away. He was strong, charismatic, knew how to read people, made friends easy and lost them just as quick. Calder waited. Olivia folded a shirt slowly. He kept secrets. Never told me what towns he'd been to, who he worked for. But he was mine. And I tried to love him as best I could. You miss him. She looked out the window. I miss the parts of him that didn't lie. Calder said nothing for a long moment. Then softly, "That's fair." That evening, Olivia opened the drawer near the hearth. The one Calder always glanced at. She took out the folded poster and read it again. Wanted, Thomas Mays. For the murder of 2 men near Abilene and the kidnapping of a settler child. Bounty, $2,000. Dead or alive. It hadn't been addressed to her. She'd found it in Tom's saddlebag after he died. No note. No explanation. And now Calder was here. With Tom's death on his hands, or someone else's. But either way, his presence was no accident. She tucked the poster into her apron and turned to face him. "I want the truth, Calder. Now." He looked up from the bench where he'd been whittling. She stepped closer, voice steady. "You were tracking a man. You said he was dangerous." "Yes." "And his name was Thomas Mays." He froze. The carving knife paused mid-cut. "You knew?" he asked quietly. "I found the poster. Same as you did." His jaw tightened. "Then you know what he did." "I know what someone wrote. Doesn't mean I know the truth." "I killed him," Calder said, standing slowly. "Outside your cabin. I didn't know it was yours. I didn't even know he was your husband until I saw the grave." Olivia's heart thudded. "And you stayed." "I was going to leave. But the storm hit. Then I got shot. Then you saved me. And now I'm here." They stared at each other across the small cabin, the distance feeling like a canyon. "You should have told me," she said. "I thought you'd kill me." She shook her head. "I still might." He gave a bitter smile. "Then maybe I deserve it." The wind outside began to howl again. She walked past him, opened the back door, and looked into the white hills beyond. "Leave tomorrow," she said quietly. "I'll pack food. I won't stop you." He nodded, slowly. "All right." She didn't look back as she closed the door behind her. That night, Olivia sat by the fire, alone. The chair opposite hers stayed empty. Boone lay with his head on her foot, ears twitching. Snow tapped softly at the window panes. She thought of Tom. His secrets. His silences. The ledger she found once in the barn. Names, numbers, strange marks she never understood. She thought of Calder. His quiet. His pain. His gentleness with her dog. The tune he hummed. The scar on his face that matched one in a nightmare she'd had the week Tom died. Not everything was simple. Not every killer was cruel. She looked at the poster one last time, then threw it into the fire. The flames took it with a hiss. Behind her, she heard footsteps creak across the floorboards. "Olivia," Calder's voice said, barely above a whisper. She didn't turn around. But she didn't ask him to leave, either. Outside, the snow began again. Slow. Soft. As if the storm had paused, but not ended. Not yet. The thaw came slower than expected. At first it was just a trickle, snowmelt dripping from the roof, a small creek humming beneath layers of ice. But the earth had begun to wake, groaning beneath its winter shell. Olivia felt it too. A shift in her chest. Uneasy and unfinished. She hadn't spoken to Calder since the night she told him to leave. They moved around each other like ghosts in the same house. He fed the fire. She cooked in silence. He mended the fence. She stitched up a blanket torn by Boone's paw. No harsh words, no questions, but no warmth either. Until the morning she found the satchel. She was gathering eggs, lifting straw when she saw it tucked behind the feed barrel. A worn leather pack, its corner stiff with dried blood. She didn't recognize it. Tom's gear had all been buried or burned. Her fingers froze above it. Slowly, she dragged it into the light. Inside were spare cartridges, a compass cracked through the middle, and beneath a folded flannel, a sealed envelope and a small silver locket. She opened the locket first. It clicked like a whisper. Inside, a woman's face stared back, smiling, soft-eyed. And beside her, a boy, gap-toothed, maybe 7. A deep pang hit Olivia in the stomach. Then she opened the envelope. The paper was stiff from cold and time. The handwriting neat. If this reaches someone worth reading it, I did what I had to do. Men like Tom Mays don't stop unless someone stops them. He killed children. Burned out a family for $10 and a horse. I saw it with my own eyes. I tried to arrest him. He pulled first. God help me, I was faster. If this costs me my life, at least let my son know I didn't die running. Let him know I was trying to be clean at the end. See? Calder. Olivia sank to her knees, breath gone. He had a son. And he hadn't just been tracking Tom for gold. He tried to bring him in alive. The truth wasn't clean. But it was more than she'd expected. She walked back to the house with the satchel against her chest. Boone followed quietly, head low. Inside, Calder stood near the stove, warming his hands. His eyes lifted when she stepped through the door. "You left something in the barn," she said. His jaw set when he saw the satchel. "You went through it." "I did." He looked down, shoulders stiff. "Then you know." She stepped forward, voice low. "You tried to do it right. Tried to bring him in. That's more than I ever knew about anyone who dealt in blood." He didn't speak. The silence stretched. Olivia broke it. "Why not tell me about your son?" A breath hitched in Calder's throat. "Because he's the one thing I still want to protect. The only clean thing left." "He's still alive?" He nodded. "With his aunt in Kansas. He don't know what I do. What I've done." She walked to the table and placed the locket down gently. "You might want this back." He stared at it like it was made of ash and memory, then slowly picked it up. "I was going to leave," he said quietly, "the morning after the snow broke. But I stayed. Not for me. Not even for you. I just couldn't make myself walk away." "You killed my husband," Olivia said, flat and clear. "I did. He was no good. But he was mine. I know. And I don't forgive you." Calder looked her in the eye. "I don't expect you to." They stood in the middle of the room, two people with 1,000 things unsaid. The fire crackled. Outside, a raven cawed through the trees. Olivia turned away, gripping the back of a chair. "I don't want revenge," she said. "But I want it to matter." "It does," he said gently. "You saved me. Not just from the snow. You gave me a chance to stand still long enough to feel the weight." She scoffed lightly. "You sound like a preacher." He gave the barest smile. "Maybe I used to be." She stared at him. He didn't flinch. She didn't ask. She didn't want to know yet. Instead, she said, "Someone will come looking. If they haven't already, they will. And when they do, I won't let them bring it to your door." Olivia swallowed. "You won't get far with one boot." "I'll manage." "No, you won't," she said, finally turning. "That's why you're staying until spring." Calder's brow rose. "I said I don't forgive you. Doesn't mean I want you dead." His voice was a low rasp. "Why?" Olivia's gaze was steady, but tired. "Because I've been walking through ashes long enough. And maybe something good can grow there if I don't salt the earth." Outside, the snow began to fall again. Not heavy. Just soft flurries, the kind that danced on the wind like secrets. Olivia moved to the window and watched the world blur behind white. Then a shape moved across the horizon. She tensed. There's someone out there. Calder was at her side instantly. Where? She pointed. A figure on horseback. Slow-moving. Watching the cabin. Hunter? She asked. Maybe. Could be a scout. Could be someone looking for me. Or for Tom. The rider didn't approach. Just turned and vanished over the ridge. Olivia stepped back. That wasn't a neighbor. No, Calder said. That was a warning. The quiet in the room shifted. Something unspoken passed between them, an understanding that the thaw had come too late. Olivia lit another lamp. We've got till tomorrow. Maybe less. Then we prepare. He moved toward the rifle leaning by the door. She stopped him. I've got traps around the north slope. I'll reset them. You take the barn. He nodded, already shifting into readiness. And in that moment, Olivia felt something she hadn't in a long while. Purpose. Not fear. Not revenge. Just the need to hold on to what little she had left. That night, they fortified the cabin. They didn't speak much. Didn't need to. Calder loaded rounds. Olivia sharpened her old skinning knife. Boone paced the floor, growling low at the door. By morning, the sun cut weak and watery through the trees. And Olivia stood by the window, rifle in hand, watching the line where snow met sky, waiting for the storm that had finally come calling. The dawn that followed was made of smoke and snow. Olivia stood at the window with her rifle, eyes scanning the frostbitten tree-line. Light filtered through branches like fire trapped in ice. She couldn't see the rider from yesterday, but she felt the weight of that silent visitor settle over the cabin like a shroud. Calder hadn't slept. He moved through the house like a man reacquainted with old habits, checking lines of sight through the windows, oiling his pistol, tying makeshift bandages around his side in case the stitches split again. Boone didn't leave the door. He growled at every shifting shadow. By noon, tracks circled the ridge. 4 horses. Maybe more. They're not coming just for me, Calder said, watching the prints from the porch. There's a price on the last man who took down Tom Mays. These boys think I'm worth collecting. You are, Olivia answered. She saw the ghost of a smile touch his face, brief and honest. The snow had crusted over, too loud for retreat, too thin for cover. There would be no running this time. Olivia gathered her things: water, matches, jerky, extra shells. Her hands moved quickly, but her thoughts felt slow, pulled through mud. She wasn't afraid, not in the way she'd feared dying before. This was a quieter kind of resolve. She wouldn't run, and she wouldn't hide. I'll take the slope behind the barn, Calder said, slinging the rifle she'd lent him over his shoulder. I'll hold the front, Olivia said. They'll come bold. Men like that always do. Their eyes met. Something old burned between them. Grief, understanding, perhaps even the early flicker of something unspoken. But it wasn't the time to name it. He started for the door. She called after him. Calder. He turned. If we don't make it, we will. Still. If we don't. She hesitated. Your son. I want to know his name. His voice caught. Daniel. She nodded once. That's a good name. He opened the door, paused, then said, And if you don't come through this, there's a tree past the ridge, shaped like a fork. I'll wait for you there. Until spring. Then he disappeared into the snow. The first bullet came an hour later. It split the air like a scream, thunking into the wood just above Olivia's head. Boone barked and hit the ground, ears pinned back. Olivia dropped low, rolled behind the doorframe, heart steady. She peered out. 2 riders. Faces wrapped in cloth. One raised his rifle again, firing at the windows to flush her out. She let him waste his shot. Then she stood, calm, and dropped him with one squeeze. The second rider bolted. She didn't chase. Let him run. One fewer problem in the storm. Then came the shouting. Hoarse voices circling behind the cabin. Calder's rifle cracked once, then again. Someone screamed. Olivia's breath caught. Not his voice. She ran to the side door and peeked out. One man was down near the fence, clutching his leg. Another crept along the barn's far side. Olivia raised her rifle and fired. The shot missed, but it spooked the man enough to dive for cover. Smoke began to curl from the barn. Olivia's heart turned cold. Calder. No answer. She kicked the back door open, Boone bounding beside her. Flames licked the barn roof now, thick black tendrils against a white sky. She ran toward it, ducking low behind the trough, coughing against the smoke. Calder stumbled from behind the barn, his sleeve on fire. Olivia threw herself at him, slapping at the flames, dragging him toward the well. He collapsed beside it, wheezing. "I didn't see the third one," he choked. "He won't get another chance," Olivia said, cocking her rifle. A whistle pierced the air. The last rider. He galloped into the yard like a devil set loose, face scarred, eyes wild, shotgun raised. Olivia didn't flinch. She stepped into the open, fired once, twice. The horse reared. The man fell hard, rolled, raised the shotgun. And Boone lunged. The dog sank his teeth into the man's arm just as he pulled the trigger. The blast went wide. Olivia sprinted forward, boot connecting with the gun, sending it skidding across the ice. The rider tried to rise. Olivia leveled her rifle, chest heaving. He froze, hands raised. "Don't shoot. I ain't the one who killed him. I just want the money." Olivia's voice was ice. "That man in the barn? He's not for sale. You'll both die for nothing," the rider spat. Olivia's aim didn't waver. Maybe. But not today. She pulled the trigger. The shot echoed through the valley. The man fell. Boone stood panting beside him, tail stiff. Olivia lowered her rifle slowly. Behind her, the barn blazed brighter, the flames catching dry timber fast. Calder hobbled over, one arm wrapped in his coat. "You all right?" she asked, brushing ash from his shoulder. He nodded. I've been worse." Together, they stood in the snow, watching the barn collapse. The smell of smoke and scorched hay filled the air. Olivia felt it sink into her skin. An ending. An old chapter burning clean. By nightfall, they'd buried the bodies in the woods. No names. No prayers. Just cold dirt and silence. They sat on the porch afterward, wrapped in blankets, knees close. Boone lay between them, finally resting. "I can't stay," Calder said quietly. "I know. They'll keep coming. Even with Tom gone. I've got names tied to mine now." Olivia didn't respond right away. Just watched the stars surface in the black sky. "When?" she finally asked. "Tomorrow. At first light." Olivia nodded once. "The ridge tree. I'll wait there. 3 days." She looked over at him. "And after that?" "I go where I'm not known." She swallowed. "You'll find your son again?" "I aim to." A long silence passed. Not awkward. Just full. Then Calder turned to her. "You could come." She didn't look at him. "This land is mine. It holds the bones of the life I tried to build. Even now. Especially now." He reached over, gently took her hand. "You saved me, Olivia. Not just from dying, but from going back to the man I was." She turned to him. "Then don't go back to him." "I won't," he said. They sat like that until the cold settled in too deep. Then Olivia stood, pressed a small parcel into his palm, a bundle of jerky, dried apples, and flint. "For the road," she said. He rose. "Thank you." "For everything," she whispered. The next morning, he was gone. She didn't cry. She didn't need to. There was peace in the quiet, in the way the smoke no longer rose from her barn, and the snow no longer swallowed everything whole. She cleaned the rifle, repaired the porch rail, fed Boone twice, though he barely touched his food. 3 days passed. Then, on the 4th, she saddled Pearl. The ridge tree stood tall, its limbs like arms reaching skyward. Beneath it, the snow had begun to melt in wide circles. And there, leaning against the trunk, was Calder. He looked up as she approached, surprise flickering across his face before it softened into something fuller. "You came," he said. "I wasn't done talking. I was hoping you weren't." She dismounted, boots crunching in the patchy snow. "There's a cabin up north," she said. "Abandoned, but sturdy. Good soil. Plenty of trees." He raised an eyebrow. "That so?" She nodded. "I figure we could fix it up. Just for the season." He stepped closer. "You sure?" "No," she said. "But I'm tired of letting what's behind me choose what's next." Calder reached for her hand. She let him take it. "I still don't forgive you," she said. "I still don't forgive myself. But," she added, "I think we could plant something new. Maybe something kinder." "I'd like that," he said. They stood beneath the tree a long while, two figures in the thaw, no longer running, no longer hiding. By sunset, they rode together, the past behind them, the future not promised, but possible. And for the first time in a long time, Olivia believed in the way